Thank you. So welcome to this first meeting of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority Firefighters Pension Board. This meeting is being held remotely and members are in attendance via video conferencing. The meeting is being live streamed on the authority's website and will also be available for repeated viewing. Those participating in the meeting are consenting to being recorded and use of those images for broadcasting purposes. I wish to remind members that this meeting is taking place during the pre-election period for the upcoming elections for the County Council, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire, District and Borough Councillors in some areas, and some parish town councillors on the 6th of May. Therefore, notwithstanding the authority's ability to hold business as usual discussion and decision making, members should remain mindful that the authority must comply with restrictions outlined in Section 2 of the Local Government Act 1986 and follows the Code of Recommended Practice on Local Authority Publicity. This meeting is being held remotely and members are in attendance via video conferencing. The meeting is being live streamed on the authority's website, but will not be published and made available for repeated viewing until following the election day. Those participating in the meeting are consenting to being recorded and use of those images for broadcasting purposes. I'll begin by naming the members who are in attendance for the public record. If you don't mind unmuting when I say your name and just confirming that you're here. During the meeting, if a member wishes to speak, they will indicate this by using the raise hands icon function or the meeting chat function and type RTS, request to speak. Members will be asked if everyone agrees with the recommendations and we will be seeking a consensus of agreement. I would like to remind members to please keep your microphone muted unless you have been called to speak, and you may be visible on the screen to the public and to other members even when you are not speaking. I will now name each member present. Stu Adamson.
Good afternoon, Jackie, I'm here.
Sean Harrison.
Good afternoon, I'm here.
Thank you. Mark Hilton. Are you able to unmute and just confirm you're in attendance, Mark?
Yeah, good afternoon, I'm here.
Lovely, thank you, Mark. Richard North.
Good afternoon, all here.
Thank you. Councillor Roger Price.
Good afternoon, all. Yes, I'm here and can hear everything.
Lovely, thank you. Richard Scarf.
Yeah, afternoon, also here.
Thank you. Ross Singleton.
Thank you, Jackie. Good afternoon, everybody present.
Thank you. And Dan Tasker.
Yeah, hi, Jackie, present and correct.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, Dan. So moving on to item 1 on the agenda, we don't have any apologies for absence, so we have full attendance. Item 2 is election of chairman. So I'm just seeking nomination for chairman until the first meeting of the board following the full authority AGM in accordance with the terms of reference. So nominations will need to be proposed and seconded. Richard?
I would like to propose Stu Adamson.
Thank you. Have we got a seconder?
I'd like to second it, Jackie.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Price. Is everyone in agreement with Stu taking the chairmanship? Yep, no dissent, so I'll hand over to Stu for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, members, for your support and the little wry smile from some on the screen. So thank you. So next on the agenda is election of a vice chairman. So could I seek any nominations for a vice chairman, please? Councillor Price, you've got your hand raised.
Sorry, it should be. That's a old one. Sorry.
Okay. A legacy hand, as we say.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
So have we got any nominations for a vice chair? Okay, in that case, I'd like to propose Richard North as vice chair. Anyone that can second that? Or anyone happy to second that?
I'm happy to second it.
And Mark? Mark, you've also got your hand raised?
Yeah, I would have seconded it as well.
Okay, so a glowing seconded nomination there, so we can record that Richard, welcome to the team and welcome as Vice Chairman. Okay, so that moves us on, members, to declarations of interest. So this is the point of the meeting where members are asked to disclose any pecuniary interests that may not be already on the authority's risk or register of interests, or any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests that anyone wishes to disclose. Has anyone got any that they wish to disclose? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item number 5, minutes of the previous meeting, which hopefully you will all have sight of in your pack. So they come Hampshire first, starting at, I think it's page 3 in the pack. So I'll go through those. Let's go through Hampshire first. So seeking any views on matters arising or accuracy. So page 3, page 4, page 5, and page 6. Okay, everyone happy with those, so we can sign those off as accurate and a good reflection of the meeting. So if we move on to page 7 within the pack, this picks up the final Isle of Wight Fire Authority Firefighters Pensions Board. So if I look for, again, accuracy and matters arising for page 7, page 8, and page 9. Okay, so we're all happy with both of those. Okay, thank you. Item number 6 is deputations. I'm not aware of any deputations. Looking towards Jackie, and I get a shaking of the head. So no deputations. So we move on to item number 7, Chairman's announcements. So I'd just like to say, on behalf of the Fire Authority, we send our condolences to Her Majesty the Queen on the death of her husband, His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, who passed away at Windsor Castle on Friday the 9th of April. If board members would like to join me in just a few moments of silence as we pay our respects now. Thank you, board members. So I suppose just a couple of announcements from me. Thank you for your support in naming me for your chairman for the next year. Hopefully we'll continue to do a good job in terms of seeking the assurance for the authority around the Firefighters Pension Scheme. Recognising obviously that this is the new Fire Authority, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, our first Fire Authority here. And I think whether we're employee reps or employer reps, as set out, we've got a responsibility to work together as a board, and I think that has seen us in good stead in the past, whether on the island or in Hampshire. So thank you for everyone's continued interest in the Firefighters Pension Scheme, especially as we move into quite a period, I think, of quite uncertainty around the transition, or not transition now, the arrangements that we have from old to new as a result of the employment tribunals, which I'm sure we will have a discussion about later on today. So with that, if we can move on to page number 11 of the pack, which is the terms of reference, item number 8 on the agenda, terms of reference for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Firefighters Pensions Board. It wasn't my intention necessarily to go through each of these elements piece by piece. I think that we can all take these and read these and digest these in accordance with our thoughts. So seeking any views for the terms of reference in Appendix A. Jackie.
Thank you, Chairman. I just felt as it was the inaugural meeting of the board, it would be good just to note the terms of reference. I know the board have already received these in the past and they've been approved at shadow, but it felt fitting that they should come to the first meeting.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. I suppose in terms of reference, and also within the terms of reference, there's an appendix to that, which obviously is an appendix to the appendix of the report, which is code of conduct. So I just want to confirm with everyone that everyone's read them, and obviously by going through that today, that we've read those and that we abide by those terms of reference and indeed the code of conduct. So if I take you back to I think it's, sorry, I'm just trying to find the recommendation from the report, which is on page 12, that Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority Firefighters Pension Board receive and note the terms of reference for the board. Can I just have a general unmuting and hubbub? I think we've come to learn to know it at the Pensions Board.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so that moves us on to item 9, which is the Scheme Advisory Board, where we're fortunate enough to have a member of the Scheme Advisory Board in Councillor Price, and just the opportunity to receive any verbal update from Councillor Price. Over to you.
Thank you. Regretfully, I wasn't at the last Scheme Advisory Board meeting because I was in hospital having a hip replacement. So I got really nothing to report. I think that Claire gets regular, and so does Rob, updates from the Scheme Advisory Board, and they're probably more up to date than what I could tell you now, because I say mine is very much outdated because I haven't been to a meeting for a while. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger, and hopefully you're recovering well from your surgery and fit and well.
Getting there. We've had some struggles, but we're getting there, I think.
Good.
Can't sit for too long, so you might see me moving around a bit.
It's good to hear, and hopefully you recover fully in the near future. I know that this was always brought in the past to discuss just if there's a different angle from the Scheme Advisory Board, but I'm sure we'll pick up those other bits from Rob and Claire in particular as we move through the agenda. So we'll move to next item, which is item number 10 on the agenda, which is the Fire Pensions Board Annual Report. This is the annual report which goes to the Fire Authority and obviously comes here just in terms of getting a quick look at before it goes on to the authority. So is it Rob, are you going to take us through this?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Certainly wasn't going to go through every item. Obviously, it is a summary of effectively what the pension board did last year. Just looking at it, I did think, and Claire's going to kill me for saying this, but obviously it's a Hampshire-based version of what happened, and I just wonder whether or not we ought to try and include some element from the Isle of Wight pension board as well. Sorry, I've literally only just thought about that looking at it. So what are members' thoughts? Do you know if one's been done for the Isle of Wight, and do you do an annual report onto the main authority?
We certainly do, yes. I can chase that up if you like for you and get a response.
Yeah, that would be good. So I think it'd be good to be able to reflect both elements.
Will do.
Yeah,
I'll chase that up. Please put that down as an action point for myself.
Thanks, Ross.
Thank you.
So as I say, this is just a very comprehensive summary of everything that we went through last year. Obviously, some of the things are ongoing and would be picked up in the update report. So I wasn't intending going through it, but happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Okay, Pensions Board members, any questions? So I've got Richard, Ollie.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of quick questions really regarding paragraphs 21, 22. If effectively now that we are a combined fire authority with Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, you no longer have automatic retrospective access to individuals' records, creating what in my mind would be an extra layer of complication and additional work for pension services when someone is at the point of retiring. Does that effectively compound the existing issues we've got with immediate detriment, or actually is it effectively the same work just talked about twice? And I guess if there is additional work, are you comfortable you've got the resources to deal with it effectively?
So yeah, so it is definitely additional work. So whilst we can get the data for the last 6 years from the island, and I think we've taken steps to do that already. The problem is the way that SAP works is you can put something in and it retros it all the way back and does all of the various calculations, etc. Clearly that won't be available to us. So we'll have to do a spreadsheet version of that and do it all manually. So it is quite a significant undertaking. But I think in terms of, we'll come on later to the sort of resources that we think we need. Obviously, Claire's fully aware of that, and we'll have to factor it in. But it is an additional complication and therefore an additional resource requirement specifically for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service. But I do have some good news on that front, so we'll pick that up later.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Rob.
Good news is always good. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Stu. Would this not be the same as anybody transferring in from another service into Hampshire? So you would have the same issues and same problems? Because as I understood it, that people coming over from the Isle of Wight were really transfers into Hampshire, into the payroll system.
Yeah, I think the issue is because we've had to create a new payroll area for the new combined fire authority. It just doesn't give us that ability to retro, and I think generally speaking we wouldn't bring historic data across anyway. So I think for an individual we can do it, but for a whole service it's slightly more complex.
Okay, thank you, Rob. If there's no other questions, I think from my perspective, I was just going to say that the data quality, like it reads like a little story of Hampshire over the last 12 years and 12 months, and the data quality is a really good improvement. It seems, and continuous improvements obviously are key for the last year and development of this year. Obviously, notwithstanding the fact that there's quite a lot of uncertainty with McLeod and everything else. So thank you for the report. And I think if we look to paragraph number, sorry, I have a bit of a lag, paragraph number 48, which is a recommendation specifically to this board that the annual report be agreed for submission to Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority Standards and Governance Committee. So could I get general hubbub? Sorry, Jackie.
I was just going to mention, Chairman, with the addition of some information about the Isle of Wight Firefighters Pension Board as well.
Yeah, so if we can add that into that recommendation with that action which Ross is going to kindly pick up. Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah, Stu, can I just ask, is that I'm assuming this will be done as a separate report for the Isle of Wight, the same as we had 2 sets of minutes at the start of this meeting, rather than trying to combine whatever the Isle of Wight had for their report into the Hampshire's report?
I think that sounds sensible, and I can see from Rob nodding his head that that seems to be the plan in his head. So, so yes.
Good.
Okay, so with that slight addition or that slight amendment to the recommendation, that the annual report be agreed for submission pending the further work to attach Hampshire and Isle of Wight together to the Standards and Governance Committee. Everyone happy with that?
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if we move swiftly on then to agenda item number 11, which is our legislation and LGA update, which obviously gives us a background on any things changing in the world of pensions. Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Hampshire board members would have heard me say this many times, but I'll say it again for the new board members. So our aim is not to go through this in detail. It is more to give assurance to the board that in effect we are on top of all of the various different issues and bulletins, etc., that come out. And clearly it just formalises the position in terms of that we are on top of those items. I will call out one thing though, because it is quite significant in terms of the update reports. So paragraph 14, you see there refers to the Schedule 22 appeal judgment. So there was an employment appeal tribunal which gave a judgment which in summary means that fire and rescue authorities are able to rely on existing guidance and apply immediate detriment to all cases, whereas previously we reported to the board that we thought we were only able to apply immediate detriment to claimants on the original McLeod Sargent case. So that is quite a significant change for us, and it's picked up in the update report. But what that does mean is obviously increases quite significantly the number of people that will fall into that category between now and April 2022 when the new changes come in. But again, happy to take any questions on any element of the report.
Thanks, Rob. Anyone got any questions for Rob? Just to pick up on that last anyone does have any questions to pick up on that last one for other board members that might not be aware. So there's been quite a lot of discussion around communications with those groups. I know Claire has put out some good comms, both email and routine notice related, just making people aware that if they have got plans for the next year to retire, to come forward as early as possible so that an assessment can be made with that. So it wasn't, I think it was only 2 members before, was that right? Two or 3 members before, but obviously that judgment opens it up to a lot more, somewhere around 150, I think. Was that right? I'm looking for nods.
I'm looking at Claire. I thought it was around 60.
Oh, Claire's just disappeared from my screen, so I can't even look for a nod. Well, a lot more.
Yeah, a lot more than 2. Yeah.
So hence the reason from the comms. So thanks to Mark for raising some of those issues, and hopefully those comms will be getting out for even those that are retiring in 10 or 11 months' time, planning to that they can start to think about that and plan that, and hopefully help our pension services team get the right benefits for them. So any questions for Rob on that report? Mark?
Yeah. Sorry. The one thing was about, and I know that Claire will say that it's all been explicit with regards to the communications that has come out to contact us if you're due to retire within the next few months. But there has been a little bit of confusion of people, and they keep coming up to me and asking me about it, which is on the pension declaration form. If you're about to retire, it says don't submit this any earlier than 3 months. And then you guys need actually 3 months to work things out. And that's where the confusion is, in that people feel when they're making out their declaration for their pension, that when it says don't fill this in any more than 3 months earlier than you're going to retire, then they've got quite a bit of time. And that's where the confusion is. It perhaps could have been communicated as submit this at the 3 month point. And that's all. I know you might disagree with me, but people are confused by it. And as a consequence, there 1 or 2 have been unable to take the immediate detriment, the remedy that you've offered, because they can't change their time frame for retirement for one reason or another, and that's down to their individual needs, I suppose. That's all.
To respond to that, Stu?
Yeah, could you?
Yeah, so I think it's a fair point. I mean, I think obviously that change to the legislation came around quite quickly, and as you quite rightly say, butted up against some people's dates. Claire will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the things that we would encourage people to do is to contact us if they're expecting to submit their pension declaration form, because I think then we can do some early work on checking their sort of matrix, checking the complexity, so that we will know at the point they submit it whether or not we can apply immediate detriment. I know that doesn't help for the ones that are coming up very quickly, but that's certainly something that perhaps you can say to people, and maybe I'll discuss with Claire about what potential comms we could get out around that. And I think we've got an item in the update report just seeking members' views on what further communications we can do on McLeod in particular.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, any other thoughts or any other questions for Rob? Okay, so if I can take you to paragraph 21 on page 36 of the pack, there's a recommendation there that the content of the report is noted by the Pensions Board. Is everyone happy to agree with that recommendation?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us on to item number 12 of the agenda, the final item, which is the status report. Back to Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So just picking out a few bits from the report. So temporary promotions, again, just to go over some of the history of this for some of the new board members. So the rules around temporary promotions and whether they were pensionable changed back in 2013. But certainly Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority missed that change. And as a result, we continued to make temporary promotions fully pensionable. Under the regulations, that wasn't the case. If you had to make a decision as to whether or not you wanted to make temporary promotions pensionable, and if you decided to, then the benefit was paid as an additional pension benefit, which is obviously not as attractive as the full final salary scheme. So obviously that caused an issue with a number of firefighters who are on temporary promotions and were expecting to get the full benefit of their temporary promotion in their pension benefits. So the authority took the decision to locally underwrite those people who were due to retire within the next 3 years and therefore would have benefited from that within their pension. So as people have retired, we've been doing the number crunching on that. And you can see in the table in paragraph 6 where we currently are in terms of the additional lump sums and the annual pension that we've been paying locally. Where that brings us to is there are still a number of remaining members that are affected, and we do think that the likelihood is that we will go over the cost cap that was agreed by the Fire Authority previously. So in paragraph 12 there, it just shows that we think the lump sums could be 35,000 higher, and the annual pensions up to 3,000. So we will be going to the full authority to ask for those increases in the cost cap. In terms of communications, so a number of items there, mainly around Claire's role. So again, just for board members understanding. So Claire Neal is the employer pensions manager. So she works for shared services within Hampshire, but effectively covers Hampshire County Council, LGPS, fire and police, and therefore we're very lucky to have a dedicated person picking up on all of the various pension issues. So she does a lot of the work in terms of networking, etc., and making sure that we're tied into local pension boards and the scheme advisory board, etc. So what we've been doing is so within Hampshire there's a member portal, so we don't send out annual benefit statements as a matter of course, so you have to log on to the portal to get access to those. Have to say firefighters are probably the worst at signing up to it, so LGPS is quite good. Police are probably top of the list, but as you can see, even after encouraging members for many years now, we've still only got 38% of people registered on the portal. And I guess the worrying point of view from a pension board point of view is that means that there are 62% of people who are not seeing their annual benefit statements and are not looking, at their pension position and perhaps asking some of the questions that they should. Councillor Price. You're on mute, Councillor Price.
So, Rob, with the point that Mark has made earlier on about when to make applications, is that with such a small take-up of registering, would that not be possible to encompass the two somehow or other within notifications out to firefighters? Because the other thing which doesn't make sense to me is that it's what 62% are not registered. And yet, Stu said at the start of the meeting, I think it was Stu or somebody did, is that we have the largest number of people watching this meeting. And I think the figure was used was 80. Now, that is a very large number of people watching what's going on at the meeting, but that isn't then transferring into actually registering. And that doesn't make sense to me. And I'm just wondering whether, what Mark was saying about making sure people make their application in time, whether we can link some of the two together.
Possibly, although obviously we only tend to communicate with the employee once they've already given us that advice that they wish to retire, and I guess at that point it's probably a bit late anyway. It's really earlier on in their careers that we need to get them registered. And I think if you look at the stats on the table, the younger you get, the less people there are that are registered.
Very much age related, isn't it?
Yeah, but having said that, even in the 55 to 65 bracket, you've only got 50% of the members registered. So, we're hoping that as we've said to you before, some of the changes that we are making is that we'll try to capture people at source. So as soon as they start, at that point, we are capturing their email address and encouraging them to register at that point before they can actually get onto the scheme. So hopefully that will start to pick up the numbers. But at the moment, all we can really do is communicate with them and encourage them to register at regular intervals. So when we do it, when the annual benefit statements go out, I think we do it if there is a auto enrolment communications going out, and it is slowly going up, but it is a few percentage points a year, really.
Ollie?
Thank you, Chair. The first point I was going to make was exactly the one that Rob has just made, in that I know the total number is low, but I don't think it's been in place for that many years, and there are year-on-year increases quite steadily. I don't think we've had a single year where that number has gone down. So we are getting to a better place. But I just wonder technically whether we can make it far more accessible to scheme members, in that when a member of staff logs on to the virtual environment, they get access to the whole suite of IBC software without having to sign on separately. And if their pensions could be simply another tab or another icon on that IBC system, all they would have to do is click a button and they have immediate access. And I think that would really increase the take-up and the visibility of individual pension records to those people. And in my mind, that would be the best option. And as a second best option, to implement something called single sign-on, where although it's still that separate hosted system that we have now, you don't need to log on separately when you access it via our internal environment. And I would really like to see one of those being a viable option.
So, Richard, was your point about that, or have you got a separate point?
No, similar point, Rob, and to reiterate what Ollie said, I think that to make it easier and to have something very visible on the initial sign-in would be very useful. And it's not those though it's hidden that far away. You know, the pensions information is readily accessible, and I don't think that the sign-in and registration process is in any way onerous. The site itself is, you know, quite self-intuitive and not difficult to navigate. So there is a case of you can lead a horse to water, but I do find it staggering that we've got 118, 120 people over the age of 50 that are choosing not to access their pension statements, and I think we've got a responsibility to do more, but I don't know what the answers are.
So yeah, so if anybody was watching Claire while you were saying that, Richard, so you may recall we did talk some time ago about as a minimum having a tile within the portal. So when you look at your, for example, your P60 documentation, that we have a tile that says pension information. So I think we're probably a long way off being able to get a single sign-on, because clearly they are entirely separate systems. So you get a single sign-on to SAP, and that gives you access to everything. But this is a UPM system, and therefore I'm not sure that we could ever get to a position where you've got the security arrangements so that it can cover both. But we'll certainly take it back as a long-term option. But I think what we do need to do is at least return to the where we started, which is how difficult is it to get a tile on the portal, which at least gives you something that says pension information. You click on it and it takes you through to the UPM site and encourages you to register. So yeah, I definitely think we can get back and have a look at that.
Rob, just in terms of the stats of that breakdown, is it possible to break down that further into contract type? Because what we're doing there is seeing, you know, the full weight of 1,400 people, but half of those are retained on-call staff who very rarely will spend time, some of them in a station or behind a computer, certainly not a Hampshire or Isle of Wight one, whereas the other ones, we've certainly in the Ops Management Board have been through our line management chains a number of times trying to encourage people, you know, who have more time at work available to do that. So I don't know if that's the case. I can see Claire shaking her head and saying no. There's no way of like sorting those.
It could possibly be done, but it would be quite difficult. Whereas at the moment it's quite straightforward to pull that information out. But I mean, it's something that we could have a look at as a once a year thing, maybe, to see what the percentage of difference is between whole time and retained.
Yeah, I just think then we would know where to focus our efforts. Because I just think you know it may help us with how we try, because we've talked about this pretty much for every board meeting, certainly the Hampshire board for the last, I don't know, couple of years at least, about trying, and like Ollie says, that it's inching its way forward, you know, slowly, but clearly we would want to get that better, and especially as people then move into the care scheme where they do need to check that in the future, won't they? Even more important. So yeah, okay. Well, if it's difficult, if it's too difficult to do, then you know that's fine. But if it helps us to be able to communicate, I think that would be useful to maybe have a look.
As you say, even if they only did it once a year, if there's a lot of work involved, then at least it gives us an annual update, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so just moving on. So obviously you'll be fully aware that we've got a new combined fire authority. So there is a project associated with the transfer of pension records over to Hampshire Pension Services, which is going well. Some of the other changes there related to the fact that, as I mentioned, so Hampshire did agree to make temporary promotions pensionable, but the Isle of Wight took the decision not to make temporary promotions pensionable. So that was a difference. At the Fire Authority yesterday, it was agreed that we would continue to have them pensionable under the new CFA, and that impacts on one scheme member who's an RDS member who's been notified directly that obviously their pension contributions will change as a result of that, but it was a very small amount. And then some of you may remember that previously modified scheme members were given the ability to retrospectively go back into that scheme, and they had to pay arrears of contributions in order to be able to do that. So as it says there in paragraph 19, we had 22 scheme members in that position, but as it says in the later paragraphs that Claire has picked up that there may be some discrepancies in what has been paid over, so we'll need to have a look at that, but we'll write individually to the scheme members to sort that out. You'd be very pleased to you'd be very pleased to hear that everybody got paid this month for serving firefighters, but also the parallel pension payroll run has also gone smoothly as well, which is probably the two most important things that we need to get right for the new CFA. Pension board membership, as you know, we've changed the arrangement, so we've now got 8 members and 2 from the Isle of Wight, so that's good to be able to put that into place. So just moving on to McLeod Sergeant, which is paragraph 28. As I've already mentioned, there was that change in the rules in terms of the EAT, which now means that we can apply immediate detriment to all scheme members, not just claimants. We had previously put out some comms in terms of trying to just outline to members what the government's response to the unfunded public sector pension scheme consultation was. And as you'll be aware, they've gone for the deferred choice underpin. So we put out that communication with those 4 key points in it. As I think we mentioned before, at the end of the day, we think that our view was that the deferred choice underpin was the right thing for the employees, probably not good news for the administrators. So what we're doing at the moment within pension services is working with UPM and the government to see what the implications are for us going forward, because clearly having to provide 2 sets of figures every year, etc., is going to be quite complex. So we need a proportionate approach to that, which gives members the information that they need. As I mentioned, because Claire's the employer pension manager, what we do within Hampshire is that we have finance, HR and pension representatives that sit on employer pension groups, which meet regularly. What we've been able to do is to extend Claire's role to take on the project management of the admin side of the McLeod judgment, and she's working with a team within pension services to move that forward. It is all about the data and the complexities of getting the regulations in place so that we know what we're doing. And what we've done at very high level, and this is only an estimate at this stage, so paragraph 35 just sets out an estimate there of the work that we think that we'll need to do over the next 6 months, over the first 2 quarters of this year, in terms of getting the data and starting to look at it and to understand the size of the task. Roger, have you got a question?
Rob, the chart which you've got there shows the police and the fire, and then a final total of police and fire. With all that is going on at the moment with the fire minister wanting to probably get the police and crime commissioner to take over fire, and I would prefer to see that as 2 separate charts, what the cost is for the police and what the cost is for fire, because it actually sort of helps to strengthen their case of doing away with fire authority. It all comes back to the same thing, but I don't want to give them any chance of saying, right, you're already working it together. So I'd sort of see two separate charts if that's possible.
Well, I think when we update that in the future, I guess there's no reason why we shouldn't just give the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire Authority figure. No need to give police at all. I just think it was there for sort of comparison purposes, because arguably there are some more complications within the fire authority because of the previous data issues that we talked about. So we can do that going forward, Councillor Price. The good news that I had is that so whilst we're looking at additional costs there for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire Authority of just over £7,500 for the first 2 quarters, and of course that will ramp up as the project proceeds. The government have just given us £139,000 as a pension admin grant, which they've never given us before. I think actually I better not say that because I'm on camera, had I? So which is very welcome, obviously. So what we're intending doing is putting that away into a holding account, and then we'll keep that separate in order to be able to fund the additional costs of McLeod. So certainly something that we've talked about in the past. We've talked about having, are we going to have the resources available to do it? So certainly pension services are gearing up to that, but effectively each of the individual organisations will have to pay for that. So the good news is we've got quite a significant amount towards that from the government.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. So immediate detriment, I think we've talked about already in terms of the fact that that is now open to all members, and we have seen quite a spate of people coming forward. So paragraph 43 references 7 cases that we've assessed for immediate detriment. I think that's probably more like a dozen. Is it around a dozen now, Claire? So about 12. And the good news is every single one of them has actually been clear and straightforward. I did say to Claire, it'll be interesting to see if and when we get one, which is complex, because we have been saying how complex this is. But at the moment, I think that's good news that we're able to apply immediate detriment to all of the cases that have come forward so far. Of course, what we do need to be careful is that once we then get into the detailed calculations, that might throw up something that we hadn't expected, but at the moment we're able to proceed on the basis of applying that across the board. So I guess one of the discussion points I'd like to have with you is, as we know, this is notoriously complex. There's different things coming out all the time. There are some people affected more than others, so just whether or not we should be doing any more, or is there any specific things that we can do in terms of our communication plan? So I just really wanted to open that up, Chairman, as just is there anything missing? So Mark has raised that point about the confusion around the 3 months issue, which is always helpful to know if there are problems on the ground, and then certainly pass those through to us and we can deal with them individually. But more generally, is there anything else that we can be doing that you think would be useful?
So, question for members, Mark. Put you on the spot a little bit.
Okay, well, I don't think that you'd be able to do what I think should be done, because I don't think you've got the capacity to do it, which is to be able to remedy people that have already gone and suffering the immediate detriment, because all the things that you can do at the moment are based on people who haven't yet retired, and that's correct. If I think it's correct, isn't it? So yeah, I think we've unable to do that I think should be done, and they're just going to have to suffer for that period longer.
Yes, it's a good point, actually. So yeah, at the moment we just don't have the authority or the regulations in place to enable us to go back for people that had already retired. I guess the question there is, are you, or is anybody getting any feedback from those pensioners? I mean, I just wonder, do we need to write to them and say that unfortunately we're not allowed to do that at the moment, or is that just going to add fuel to the fire?
Well, in actual fact, there's some who are retired and out of trade members who have asked for their details to be sent to head office of the FBU to see if anything can be done about their immediate detriment not being paid currently.
Yeah, so I think there is another employment tribunal case that has been lodged in respect of that, hasn't there? So clearly, while that plays out, we'll just have to see what happens. But we certainly don't have the authority to do it at the moment. Whether that changes in the future, we'll have to wait and see. But it's whether or not we should proactively communicate with those members. But then, how far back do you potentially go for that? So it could be quite a lot of work.
I don't think that there's that many members, and I think there's about half a dozen people who have currently asked for those details to be sent to head office.
I mean, is it worth, with those that you know of, I suppose, is there some key lines that we can share with those people so that they know what that looks like, rather than go on the sort of proactive side of talking to everyone? Is that those that certainly nominate themselves or make themselves aware to us, there's some key lines that could be shared along those legal lines, Rob?
Possibly, although I would assume they're probably already aware of that if they've already approached head office already. So, but yeah, certainly happy to have the details of the members from Mark if he's happy to share them. But he may need to speak to them first to make sure that they're comfortable to do that.
I'll forward their details.
So I've got the two Richards. So go with Ollie North first.
Thanks, Chair. For me, the people who have already retired and maybe on a smaller pension than they will be in the future because of the immediate detriment, are any of those early retirements due to ill health? And if they are we able to prioritise those very specifically?
So I'll look at Claire. I think we'd already looked at that as a cohort, but I think even that was that people who were due to retire rather than had retired on ill health. I can't remember. You'll have to help me out on that one.
So those we were looking at were those where, under immediate detriment guidelines currently, we can offer it to ill health people that hadn't got an ill health entitlement from the 2015 scheme. And I don't think we've actually got any of those cases, because all of them have been able to get their benefits. So we haven't had to deal with immediate detriment for an ill health case. But with regard to those that have already retired, there are definitely some ill health cases within there. But again, we're in the realms of, yes, potentially we could prioritise those, but we need guidance to say that we can go back and do them before we could do that.
I completely understand that. I guess from as that sort of key vulnerable group of people, if that initial work can be done, so we know who those people are, we know we've done the calculations already for them. So actually, when the legal framework is in place, it's more or less just pressing a button to make it happen. So they can then be reassured that the groundwork is all done. As soon as you're able to, it will be what is owed to them will be given to them.
I mean, are we going to be in? I'm not sure we can actually do the calculations yet. So we can certainly identify them and understand the position, but I think that's part of the problem. Until the regulations come out, we don't actually necessarily know what the calculations are, and clearly that's a lot of work potentially to guess at those and then have to undo them at a later date. But yeah, certainly I think we take that as an action to at least have the cohort that may be impacted, and understanding their position, so that when we do get something, we can act on those quite quickly.
Thank you.
And I guess that's part of the complicated nature to do with the communications. Well, I'll come back to that in a second. My thoughts on that. But Rich, Scarf.
Thanks, Chief, and apologies if I've misunderstood anything, but surely our communication should be based on the member's status within the scheme, and that we shouldn't be differentiating or having different communication for somebody that's written to their union head office. And again, apologies if I've misunderstood if that wasn't what was being proposed. I'd much rather that we were providing the same information for everybody that fits within that cohort and not distinguishing between somebody that's active with their union or otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. But I think what it'd be useful, I think it'd be useful to understand what the issue is, so that we know what question we're answering in the first place. But I do take your point that.
And I think that's the key bit, Robin, in that really useful to engage with what those issues are that are being highlighted through those conversations, to then share that same information with everybody.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think just thinking on my points around comms, I think, you know, if we just look at the comms around getting people to sign up for the portal, it proves that we need simple comms and them to be repeated over a long period of time. So as painful as that is, I think that this is just, you know, part of that same issue, is that we will need to almost have a campaign of comms rather than just the odd occasional comm that goes out, which I know, you know, Claire has been putting together comms around routine notice, etc. But it feels to me like kind of almost like building a picture is needed, because certainly when I speak to people, I don't think that they understand the complexities of, well, why can't you just play, you know, why is this such an issue? There's, you know, there's not much to calculate. It's just the final salary. It's not taking into account all of the pension contributions, the tax implications, all of those other aspects that are folded into those. And I just wonder, I don't know how we do this, but I wonder whether there's something to get some advice from someone to how do we build a picture of this to help people understand, so that they do have more of an understanding and therefore get less frustrated. Because I think that's ultimately where we all get to, is that everyone wants people to get the benefits that they are due. It's just a case of making that achievable in the best possible way.
So just I'm trying to think, where did we get to on frequently asked questions, Claire? Did we do a set from McLeod?
I did draft some, but there have been some which have been issued with some comms, which are the Home Office frequently asked questions. So they go into a lot more detail than the ones that I think I'd started to pull together. Yeah,
because I think very often, you know, trying to have too much of a narrative every time is going to be complicated. So I just wonder if what we could do fairly regularly is remind people what the current position is, i.e. that we can apply immediate detriment because of the change to the regs, but our policy is to only do that in simple cases, to put out what's the process you need to go through, picking up on Mark's point about the timing, and then just giving them the link to the frequently asked questions and saying again, if you are due to retire within the next year, please contact us. And as you say, maybe just keep drip feeding that every now and again, just to keep reminding people of what the position is, what they need to do, what we're not able to do on some of those ideas. So yeah, I think that would be.
Shall I just propose, shall I have a chat with Nikki, just in terms of comms, and just see what she comes up with, you know, in terms of how do we drip feed this out so that it isn't sort of starting from scratch every time and not, you know, creating more of a burden for your team and for Claire each time. If there is some frequently asked questions that we can just, you know, if our comms can put the front end story, you know, or news flash on it, and then we can point to that, then that might be a more sustainable way of doing it. I'll have a chat with Nikki.
Yep.
Sorry, Ollie.
Thank you, Chair. Just really to add to what you're saying, in that within the comms that goes out, please sell pre-retirement courses, because many of these questions that are coming up from people that might retire in the next year or two would be so easily answered if they would attend a pre-retirement course. And actually then they'll be able to help other people along the way, because they'll have such a better understanding themselves.
Yep, good point. So we can publish and promote those at the same time.
I think it'd be really helpful.
Okay, I've forgotten where we got to. Did you get to? Oh, sorry, Sean.
Sean's got his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's also important to remember that some of the things that we're not going to be able to do for members, obviously the O'Brien case. So there's going to be lots of people that we want their final figures, but we're not going to be able to fulfil that for them until we've got a system in place to be able to follow that.
Yeah, so we've talked again in the board about O'Brien and the overlapping issue. So at the moment we are proceeding with immediate detriment without knowing the outcome of that. I mean, certainly that one seems to be going pretty slowly as well. So it could be years before we get an outcome on that. So I think we have no choice other than to proceed as we are at the moment. And no doubt if O'Brien then gets sorted, we could be in the position of having to redo a lot of the calculations again. So it almost couldn't be more complicated. But yeah, for the moment we just have to wait and see what happens on that. We can't hold everything up waiting for a decision. But it certainly will be an awful mess if there are overlapping issues and we have to undo everything. We could end up doing 3 sets of calculations if we're not careful. Because obviously the regs could then change again after April 2022, and the immediate detriment cases that we've already done could end up having to be recalculated. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do.
Okay, I'm looking to you, Rob. I don't know.
Yeah, so that was all I wanted to do. I mean, just so the recommendations ask you to note the content of the report. And also draws attention to the risk register, which we're asked to look at each time. To be honest, I still think the biggest risk on the risk register is McLeod itself, and not having the skills and resources and capacity to be able to deal with it. I certainly don't think we're in that position, and the money that we had from the government will help in that regard as well.
So just with that, Rob, do we need to review that? Based on the money that we've got and the ability that gives you to put some more resource that way.
So I think we were comfortable that we'd said that we would put the resources into it anyway. It was more a case of less about the money and more about the capacity within the pensions team, etc., to have the skills and ability to pick up the work. So I don't think anything has changed in that regard. So I think we're okay.
Okay. Okie doke. Rich, Scarf.
Just quickly, the financial risk is one element, but obviously we're quite reliant on individual expertise as well. And I know there is no answer to this, but what would happen if Claire weren't there? And do we need to at least record that risk? And could there be any kind of a plan for succession planning or upskilling?
I think cry is the it's the only action I can go up at the moment. So at the moment, Claire is project managing the McLeod work, but obviously it's the pensions team that will actually be carrying it out. So if it was if it was a single point of failure, if it was all down to Claire, then yes, I think we'd have a bigger issue. But it is going to be. I think we were talking about potentially a team of up to 12 people. Is that right, Claire? By the time we get into the real nitty gritty of it, so yes, it certainly would be a big loss. In fact, I'd worry more about the general pensions position and supporting this board and all the work that Claire does in putting the reports together than I would about McLeod. But hopefully she's not going anywhere just yet.
We'll move swiftly on to Roger before Claire has a chance to say anything.
Yeah. Rob, my memory, I think we were talking about taking on 8 extra staff. I mean, you've just mentioned 12. When do you see that we're going to need to take those on? And do you see a problem of actually getting people with the ability to do it?
So to be fair to pension services, what they've been planning for some time is that they knew that this was coming along. So what they've been doing is recruiting additional people to pick up the sort of BAU work to free up their more experienced people, particularly within the fire and police schemes, to work on this project team. So that is already in train. And I say it's the more experienced people that they'll put onto the McLeod stuff, because you clearly need a good grounding in the regulations and the number crunching already in order to be able then to do the extra calculations that McLeod requires. So again, I think we're in a good place on that. Whether it'll end up being 8, whether it'll end up being 12, we don't know. So as the work progresses, we'll have more of an idea of the amount of capacity that we'll need. But which is why we only provided 6 months within those tables, because we don't know how it might take off after that point. So once we've got a little bit more experience, a little bit more understanding of how complicated some of the data is and some of the issues are, then we'll be able to refine that.
So Rob, when one takes on staff to do the general run-of-the-mill stuff, will they be on sort of temporary contracts, or will they be full-time employees? And therefore, when the McLeod issue is hopefully at some point finished and sorted, those staff that are on that unit would then go back to their own job, or?
Yep, so they would, but the other thing we've got coming along the line, just because we haven't got enough to do, is we are taking on some new organisations in terms of starting their pension administration. So we will need more staff for that anyway. So hopefully we can combine the two, so that there will still be roles for those people that we've taken on.
Following from what you've just said, is that other fire services? Because knowing what has been going on in the background about, different organisations within the services in the country not sort of wanting to do the fire pensions because of the complications, that's the ones we're taking on, or LGPS ones?
It's LGPS. So at the moment we do obviously do Hampshire and Isle of Wight, but we also do fire as an embedded fire service within West Sussex. So we do 2 fire authorities at the moment. Okay.
Brilliant. Okay, no other questions for Rob. If I can drag everyone's eyes towards the reports pack, and there's a couple of recommendations at the end of that report, which I'm just looking for. One to do with risk. Sorry, I've gone to another page.
Page 102.
Number 102 in the pack that I've got, a recommendation in paragraph 50, which is that the content of the report be noted by the Authority Firefighters Pensions Board. Is everyone comfortable with that recommendation?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Great.
Good. And then the final recommendation, paragraph 51, that the risk register set out in paragraphs 26 and 27 of Appendix B be approved by the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority Firefighters Pensions Board. And we just discussed that. Is everyone happy and agree with that?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Thanks once again to Rob and the rest of your team, Claire, and thanks to Jackie for the work to help support the meeting and kick the meeting off. I think that's us done for today, so thanks very much. The next meeting is in the next quarter. I haven't got the date to hand.
The 20th of July, Chairman.
20th of July.
It's on the 8th of July, so that should all now be in people's diaries.
Fab. Thank you, Jackie. Okay, hopefully everyone can go and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Would you like me to request the webcast is stopped now?
Could we do that, please?